When we read about the famous fall of the Western Roman Empire, which is in history books often dated to 476 AD, we often wonder, why didn't someone actually try to restore it? Why wasn't there apparently anyone willing to restore the old glory of Rome? Why did everybody just accept the fact that it was over? Well, what if I told you that there actually were quite a few tries to restore the Western Roman Empire, either directly or indirectly? And hopefully you will be as surprised as I was when I learned how many such attempts there actually were. So let us then go through the list of the many tries to restore the fallen Western Roman Empire. 1. The rebellions of Barila and Adaric against Odoacer. On September 4th, 476 AD, Odoacer famously deposed the child emperor Romulus Augustus, and thus ended the line of Western Roman emperors, which was traditionally dated as the fall of the Western Roman Empire. In reality, of course, not so much had changed, and Odoacer actually pledged to reign as a representative of the Eastern Roman Emperor Zeno at Constantinople, at least in the beginning of his reign. This is a famous story that some of you might already know, but what many don't know is that actually almost immediately after Odoacer deposed the Western Roman Emperor, there were rebellions against him. In 477, a certain Count Barila rebelled, and just 1 year later in 478, another one called Adaric too rebelled against Odoacer. This is accounted by the historian Jordanes, who wrote that Odoacer slew Barila at Ravenna in order to inspire fear of himself among the Romans. Barila sounds like a Germanic name, so it is all the more interesting that Odoacer slew him in order to instill fear of himself among the Romans. Could it be that Barila planned to rule through a puppet emperor like Ricimer or like Gundobad before? Could it be that this Count Barila had supporters among the Romans against Odoacer? Highly fascinating. It seems like an interesting but also plausible theory to assume that Odoacer had done something so outrageous, namely to not continue ruling through Western Roman puppet emperors, that probably even quite a few Germanics didn't agree with that and instead sought to become a second Ricimer and reign through puppet emperors. In that case, the Western Roman Empire would have nominally been restored, since there would have again been a Western Roman emperor. Second, Julius Nepos's Reconquest plans. When Odoacer ended the rule of the young Romulus Augustus, sending him to exile near Neapolis, the line of Western Roman emperors in fact did not end. Because Julius Nepos was the rightful Western Roman emperor and he was ruling from exile in Dalmatia, his home province. When he received news of Odoacer's coup in Italy, he immediately sent envoys to the Emperor Zeno at Constantinople, bidding him for military help in order to reconquer Italy from this Germanic usurper. But unfortunately, Zeno had to constantly deal with usurpations, and thus he was in no position to send aid to Nepos. Interestingly, Nepos had already invaded Italy just 2 years before, with Eastern Roman reinforcements, ending the reign of the puppet emperor Glycerius and of the puppet master Gundobad, nephew of the feared Ricimer himself. But in 480 AD, Nepos's plans came to an abrupt halt when he was murdered by 2 of his foederati officers called Ovida and Viator. One theory why they murdered him was that the previous emperor Glycerius, whom he had deposed in 474, was now Bishop of Salona, the capital of Dalmatia from where Julius Nepos was reigning, and that Glycerius paid off those 2 soldiers in order to take revenge on Nepos. But the other, much more interesting and in my opinion more plausible theory is that Nepos was planning to mount a reconquest expedition on his own against Odoacer, planning to retake Italy and to restore himself as Western Roman Emperor. And that his army was understandably not so keen on that, seeing that their chances were 50-50 at best without Eastern Roman support, and that they thus chose to end Nepos's life in order to save their own. A fascinating theory, because that could have been a real chance to restore the Western Roman Empire. So what would have happened if Julius Nepos had reconquered Italy and deposed Odoacer? How would such an alternate reality look? Imagine you want to create such a world, say for a novel or for an RPG campaign or for a game. How would you go about to create a rich and detailed world in which the Western Roman Empire was restored? Well, I would use World Anvil. World Anvil is the ultimate all-in-one software for tabletop gamers, fantasy novelists, and anyone who loves creative world building. World Anvil is not just one tool, it's 3 complete creative tool sets: a world building suite, an RPG campaign manager, and a novel writing and publishing tool. So if you, for instance, want to write an alternate history novel in which Julius Nepos successfully restores the Western Roman Empire, then World Anvil is perfect for you, since it is not just a writing software, it's a novel planner and world building app. You can create super detailed family trees to make your characters extremely realistic and believable. You have mind mapping tools to help you keep track of plot lines. You can create detailed and realistic maps and use plot templates based on proven storytelling methods, so that you are sure to be able to finish that novel. And with publishing, subscription and monetization tools, you can even build your fan base. Writer's Digest listed World Anvil as the best website for writers. But World Anvil can also be used for RPG games. 2 million game masters worldwide use World Anvil to create super detailed campaigns. So no matter what kind of world you want to create, there's probably no better world builder suite than World Anvil. You can get 51% off any premium subscription by using the code in the video description. So don't hesitate and start building fascinating worlds with World Anvil. 3. Burdunellus. It is written in the Consularia Caesar Augustana that in 496 AD, a Roman called Burdunellus rebelled in Hispania in the kingdom of the Visigoths, trying to become a Roman ruler. We don't know anything else, neither his motivations, nor if he planned to restore Hispania as a Roman province, or if he wanted to claim the title of Western Roman Emperor. We only know that his usurpation failed, that his supporters turned on him, and according to the same source, he met a very cruel and brutal fate, supposedly being burned to death in a brazen bull, although this might have been a literary exaggeration. Hopefully. 4. Petrus. Only 8 years after Burdunellus, another Roman called Petrus also tried to make himself Roman emperor. Petrus tried to find other Romans for his cause, possibly in order to restore the province of Hispania, which still was overwhelmingly inhabited by Romans, mind you, possibly in order to overthrow the Visigothic rulers. But that too failed. He did not gain enough supporters, and he was executed once the Visigoths managed to conquer the city of Dertosa, where he had fortified himself. And thus also this plan to restore or partially restore the Western Roman Empire failed. 5. Theoderic. The king of the Ostrogoths, Theoderic, was almost Western Roman Emperor in all but the name. Even the Senate and the people of Rome often called him Emperor. By 511 AD, he had even brought the Visigothic kingdom under his control and had established a hegemony over the Burgundian and Vandal kingdoms. This would have almost been the birth of some sort of Western Romano-Gothic empire. However, this didn't last long, and as he aged, control started slipping away from him, and then this dream died with Theoderic. And then the Gothic kingdom was utterly destroyed by the Eastern Romans. But it is fascinating to ponder that we might have almost witnessed the birth of some modified form of Western Empire, of both Roman and Gothic descent. 6. Belisarius. In 540 AD, the legendary Eastern Roman general Flavius Belisarius entered the city of Ravenna, conquering that big stronghold of the Ostrogothic kingdom. In order to achieve that, he had pretended to accept the offer by the Ostrogoths to make him new Western Roman Emperor. In our timeline, Belisarius remained faithful to the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian. But what if Belisarius would have seized this opportunity and made himself indeed new Western Roman Emperor? It is fascinating to think about that possibility, because indeed the Western Roman Empire then would have been restored with a new and very capable emperor. But Belisarius let that chance pass and remained faithful to the Roman emperor at Constantinople, and thus we will never know what would have happened and if the Western Roman Empire could have been successfully restored. 7. Tiberius II and Germanus. In 582 AD, the Emperor Tiberius II was dying at Constantinople, capital of the Roman Empire. He chose as his successors the able general Maurice or Mauricius and the patrician and governor Germanus. He planned to restore the Western Roman Empire and make Germanus Caesar of the West and Maurice Caesar of the East. Germanus would have ruled over Africa, Spania and Italia, and thus over a partially restored Western Roman Empire. However, Germanus stepped down after only a few days being Caesar. We don't know why, but it is fascinating to ponder the alternate reality in which Germanus would have accepted to become new Western Roman Emperor. Where would he have reigned? Would he have been successful in driving out the Lombards from Italy and to reconquer larger parts of Spain from the Visigoths? Fascinating possibilities. But with Germanus' refusal, this try to restore the Western Roman Empire unfortunately failed. Maurice became emperor, but he created the exarchates of Italy and Africa, which we could interpret as some form of diminished form of restoration of the Western Roman Empire. Salve and hello, dear friends of late Roman history. It's me, Sebastian, the creator and the person behind Maiorianus. As you know, Maiorianus is one of the very few channels on YouTube dedicated only to late Roman history. And as you also know, this is a super niche topic, which unfortunately very often doesn't get a lot of love from the YouTube algorithm. I therefore wanted to ask if you could support Maiorianus via a YouTube membership by clicking the join button below the video, or via a Patreon membership, and you can find the link to Patreon in the video description below. Your support and your support only is what makes Maiorianus possible, and I really need your support in order to keep Maiorianus a channel about late Roman history. Thank you again for your support. Majorian himself, I think, would be proud. Bene valete, friends of late Roman history, and back to the video. 8. Constance II. Constance II was a very underrated Eastern Roman emperor who realized that in order to save the crumbling empire, great reforms were necessary. And one such audacious move that he planned was to shift the imperial capital from Constantinople, which by his time had been capital of the Roman Empire for more than 300 years, and shift it to Syracuse in Sicily. Why to Syracuse though? Well, in order to mount a giant naval expedition against the Caliphate, and in order to thus, with reinforcements from Africa, reconquer Egypt and later the Levant from the Muslim invaders. But that story ended tragically, as you can imagine. He was killed while taking a bath by one of his servants with a soap bowl. He was also the last Roman emperor to ever set foot into Rome, the old capital, in 663 AD. He even stayed in the palace of the Caesars, 189 years after Julius Nepos was the last emperor before him to ever be in Rome. He was the last one who cared about the old Western Roman provinces. He understood the significance of the remaining Western provinces in order to mount the reconquest of the lost provinces of the East. Some sort of Western Roman Empire could have thus been reborn under his rule, but it never came to that. 9. Western Roman usurpers under Eastern Roman rule: Olympius, Micitos, Georgius, Basil Onomagolos, and Tiberius Petasius. We would think that now all the tries to restore the Western line of Roman emperors was over, but nay, far from it. Because in 649 AD, during the rule of Constance II, the Exarch of Ravenna himself, called Olympius, rebelled against the very same Eastern Roman Emperor Constance II, declaring himself counter-emperor. He marched into Sicily in 652, but he and his army were killed by an unknown disease, and thus ended the life of this Western Roman usurper. Then, after the death of Constance II, one called Micitos was proclaimed emperor in Sicily, supposedly against his will. His rebellion lasted for 7 months, until it was suppressed by Constantine IV and Micitos was executed. From 710 to 711, one called Georgius, after the death of the Exarch of Ravenna, claimed imperial authority for himself in Italy. Not much more is known about him, only that his usurpation failed. But Sicily continued to remain a spawning ground for usurpers, because since Constance II, Syracuse had now established itself as a potential Western Roman imperial residence. And so in 717, news arrived at Sicily that Constantinople had supposedly fallen to the Caliphate. Promptly, a state official of the name of Basil Onomagolos declared himself new emperor, taking the regnal name of Tiberius. However, this rebellion too was quickly put down by Emperor Leo III, and thus another would-be Western Roman emperor came to an end, being captured and executed not much later. But it was still not over, because in 730 or 731, one called Petasius declared himself emperor in Italy, north of Rome, taking the regnal name of Tiberius. But the exarch of Ravenna, Eutychius, who was loyal to the Emperor Leo III at Constantinople, marched forth from Ravenna and called upon the Pope at Rome to support him against the usurper. The Pope Gregory II listened and sent reinforcements. Tiberius had fortified himself at Castrum Manturianense, a battle was fought, and Tiberius lost and was killed. And thus ended the last of the what we could call Western Roman usurpers. This indeed was the last time that a Roman usurper from the ancient Roman heartland of Italy would try to establish imperial authority in Italy or Sicily, the old heartlands of the Roman Empire. Even though these were not direct tries to restore a Western Roman Empire, we can indeed see them as Western Roman usurpers against an Eastern Roman emperor, which I personally find very fascinating. We could even make the somewhat funny and outrageous argument that Tiberius Petasius was the last Western Roman emperor, because Romulus Augustus was also just a Western Roman usurper 255 years before Tiberius Petasius. I find that thought kind of funny and hilarious, just something to think about. And only 20 years after Tiberius's rebellion, the Exarchate of Ravenna fell, and the influence of the Eastern Roman Empire in the West began to diminish significantly, soon to be replaced by other rising powers. All tries to restore a Roman imperial residence in the West had now definitely come to an end. Or did they? Because as we know, the Empire of Charlemagne, and then the Holy Roman Empire, were also some sort of tries to restore the Roman Empire. But more about that another time. And please like and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And I would like to thank our new Sol Invictus member, Karl Cieslak, which I'm certainly pronouncing wrong again, I apologize. Thank you so much, Karl Cieslak, for supporting Maiorianus in such a generous way. And I would also like to thank Joa for returning as Sol Invictus. Thank you so much, Joa, for continuing to support Maiorianus in such a generous way. And I would also like to thank our two new Kaisar supporters, Viperwolf and Wyatt Pringle. Thank you so much, Viperwolf and Wyatt Pringle, for your support. And I would of course like to thank each and everybody who is supporting Maiorianus in any way, shape or form, be it through Patreon, through YouTube membership or through a PayPal donation. Thank you for supporting Maiorianus so that I can keep this a channel about late Roman history. And if you want to learn more about what possibly could have happened if Julius Nepos would have restored the Western Roman Empire, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you want to learn more about the Gothic Wars and the legendary Roman general Flavius Belisarius, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history. Gratias tibiago and bene valete.